Young friends, if you are very, very smart and you're very, very lucky, you can be very, very rich very, very quickly if you connect to the global economy through technology. How many of you have heard of Tumblr? That's good. That's good. Tumblr is a micro blogging website and a social entrepreneurship enterprise platform. 6 years back, a 19-year-old kid in his small little apartment in Manhattan started this little platform. And last year he sold that to Yahoo for a cool 1.1 billion dollars. And the road is filled with such cases. So, what I want to say today is globalization that is taking place is creating so much opportunity. Let me first give you an outline of my talk today, okay? What I want to do is talk to you into thinking of opportunities to consider starting your own business as an option. As Dr. Mehra said, this is one of the hats I wear, helping young people. The other thing is consider as an entrepreneur plugging into the world economy. And we'll talk about that more. The biggest advantage for this country for being an entrepreneur is that you become job creators, because jobs are the biggest challenge in this country. So you make money for yourself and you create prosperity for the country and above all create jobs. I'm going to briefly touch about what are the essential elements of becoming an entrepreneur. And then I will go spend a little more time on the macro trade level situation that relates to India. At that time, I will talk about 3 killer apps. You know apps. Everybody knows apps. 3 killer apps for technology and innovation. And then finally, the biggest killer app of all, skills for effective communication for successful international business. One small housekeeping matter. Please don't forget to turn on your mobile after the presentation is over. Good. As I promised in the announcement, we will start with the quiz. I see all of you have got your papers out, your pencils out, your pens out. That's great. Okay, so don't be nervous. 2 reasons for not being nervous about this quiz. One is, this isn't going into your brains. Whatever score you have, that's going to your brain. And the second thing is that it will be self-evaluation, which means nobody else knows your test scores. If you don't know that, your friend still thinks highly of you. So those are the 2 qualifying things. Okay. The reason I'm doing this quiz is it's related to international trade. Some of the questions are very simple, as you will see. So all you have to do is I will speak the question. In fact, it will be there on the screen there. And you just have to write number 1. Don't write the question and just write the answer. Okay? So, first question. How many zeros after 1 in a million? So you just write 1 and then put the number of zeros you think should be there after 1 for a million. That's question number 1. Number 2 question. How many zeros after 1 in a crore? Third question. How many zeros after 1 in a billion, the B? Fourth question. What does GDP stand for? So just put 4 and write the full form of GDP. Good question. Roughly, how many rupees in a dollar today? Roughly. Is it 55, 62, or 67? Just pick one. Number 6. What is India's GDP? And I'm not saying the full form because I'll be giving away the answer. Is it $600 billion? Is it 1.800? It's 1.8 trillion? Or it is 3 trillion? So pick one. Next question, number 7. What is the world GDP? Is it 50 trillion approximately? Is it 70 trillion? Or is it 100 trillion? Number 8. What is India's biggest import in value? What commodity we import the most? Number 9. And now it's getting a little more tougher, so don't feel bad if you don't fully know the answer. What is the biggest if the currency is devalued, does it help the country's export or does it help country's import? So just write export or import, whichever you think is the right answer. Number 10. What is the biggest reason for currency devaluation? Is it a recession in the country? Is it trade deficit? Or is it inflation? So just pick one which is the most important. 11. Which country has been accused for currency manipulation? Is it China? Is it India? Or is it South Africa? And finally, what are the 5 countries that collectively are called BRICS? I'll give you a few minutes to write, not a few minutes, I'll give you 50 seconds to write the names of 5 countries that collectively are called BRICS. Alright, okay. Now, just fold the paper or close the notebook, and that's it. We're not going to worry about this. We're going to just listen and participate. And remember, I'm not, as I said, I'm not grading you, so feel free to ask questions. If you have to make a fool of yourself, that's okay too. Because unless we make fools of ourselves, we don't learn. So ask questions. Don't worry about not. The idea is that you understand what I'm saying here today. So let me begin by making one statement. I believe India has the best prospects of economic growth in the world. I truly believe that. And for that, I have 3 reasons. One, the young people in India. In the next 10 years, 300 million young people will join the labor force in India. Greater than those in China. 300 million young people. And that number is greater than the entire population of the United States. But there's a caveat. And the caveat is, if we don't provide opportunities for them to put their energy, their ambition, their talent, their education, then we would have lost an opportunity of our lifetime to become economic superpower. And that is why young people have to think in terms of becoming job creators. So that's going to be the biggest challenge. Get these 300 million people give their best so that we can be an economic superpower. The second factor why I think India will be a superpower, super economic power, is we are moving towards globalization. We are moving towards plugging into $72 trillion economy. But we have to accelerate it. And we will talk about how we can accelerate it. And finally, the role of technology. That is going to be super important. And I'm going to talk about them a little bit more as we move forward. I just want to, as Professor Nara said, let me talk about a little bit about what I do, very briefly. I'm the president of Bank World Inc. I manage projects in 75 countries, including several in South Asia, including India, in former Soviet Union, Russia, Ukraine, in the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America. And one of the things that we found, country after country, that the jobs are created by micro, small, and medium-sized industries. Micro, small, and medium-sized industries. In brief, we call them MSMEs. They are the engines of driving prosperity. They are the engines of creating jobs. As much percent of jobs are created by MSMEs. Not the big corporations, not the Ambanis and Birlas and Tatas and General Motors, not the government. Government is in fact shrinking in most places. But the MSMEs are the driver. Now, the World Bank does all kinds of scientific studies on each country and ranks them. So, what is most critical, they found, for creating small and medium businesses is access to finance. So, if you want to start a business, you have a great plan, you tested it, you started a market, you got everything ready, but where's the capital? Banks don't lend money to startups because what's the collateral? They are very cagey about it. If Tatas come, or Ambanis come, how much money do you want, sir? Take it. But for micro, small entrepreneurs, they are very cagey. But here's the good news. In the World Bank ranking of access to finance to MSMEs, India has a very high ranking. Its number is 28 out of 183 countries that it has records of. That's extremely good. But what is sad, the same World Bank also does a study called Ranking of Doing Business. How does the country allow new businesses to be formed? They do a ranking of that. And sadly, India is ranked way below. It's like 134 out of 189. But there are organizations, and to address Professor Mehra, I create the other organization that we work with, the non-profit. We have 15 centers throughout India. And one of our objectives is to train young people to think in terms of becoming entrepreneurs by giving them skills and motivation so that they become job creators instead of job seekers. We do that at grassroots level, but there's another organization that does that in Gujarat. It's a private-public partnership with the government of Gujarat, where Professor Dr. Sudhir Jain, the director, is a member of board, fortunately. That is trying to create an ecosystem under which new entrepreneurs can start their business. It's like an incubator for tech entrepreneurs. So please check those out because those are excellent things that are available. And the only thing is sometimes people don't take full advantage of it. But what I want to say is, in terms of innate abilities of Indian young people, we are not only no less than anybody in the world when it comes to being creative, being entrepreneurial, than anybody else. We are better than anybody. Given the right ecosystem, we are one of the most successful entrepreneurs. Let me show you the next slide. Forbes just last week, announced the list of 100 most likely to grow industries in the United States under 250 million. These are the star industries for the next coming years, that they will grow the fastest. Out of that 100, 8 are formed or running by Indians, Indian Americans or NRIs who are there. 8. And you know what's the percentage population of Indians in America? Anybody? What do you think? How many Indians are there in America? What do you think? 1%, 2%, 3%? 3-4%. 1%. We're a very small community there. 1% of people represent 8% of the best growing companies in America. That is because, given the right ecosystem, Indian mind is very entrepreneurial. And that's why I keep saying that I'm looking to the dual kind of qualification that one day you will be thinking seriously of starting your own businesses. I want to now come to a very serious matter. I mean, it's all serious so far. We have a very large domestic market, so we do a lot of production for domestic consumption. But I want to tell you, the jobs creation that is taking place in China is not for domestic consumption. It is because they have plugged into the world economy. Germany, Singapore, Malaysia, Brazil, you name the countries that are growing in terms of creating jobs, creating prosperity. It's because they have plugged into the big world economy. I'm going to try to show you some of the slides in terms of where we are in world trade and what are the opportunities. But first thing I want to say, obviously there's a clear advantage. If you plug into a larger economy, you have a greater market, right? No question about it. What do you think is the other advantage of plugging into the global economy? One is your bigger market, right? What do you think is the second advantage? Anybody? Just take a guess. What do you think? When you export, what happens? Anybody? Technology exchange. Keep saying, and then what happens? What happens? So what's your name?
Because this cash flow.
There's cash flow.
Currency exchanges.
Currency, yes. But what's your name? Manjur, you were getting on to something. There's a technology coming into your country because you have to make products that are competitive to the rest of the world. So you become globally competitive in quality and globally competitive in price. Otherwise you can't sell your products and compete with others. But then what happens is that the same benefit that you give to the rest of the world, you start giving to your domestic market. Because your products have the new technology, they're competitive in quality, in price. And therefore, at that point of time, no China or Hong Kong can come and eat your lunch here. You don't have to see Saraswati Ji and Lakshmi Ji Murti made in China once you are plugged into the world economy. Because your products are world quality and world price. So now I want to talk about how we are in the world economy. But before we do that, let's go back to the quiz. You thought I'm an absent-minded professor, I might have forgotten what the quiz was, right? I know. I was in your chair once. I was hoping you were hoping I'd forget. Okay, let me ask you. It was not so simple. I know it was simple, but it's probably not so simple a quiz. Who of you had the chutzpah to come here and give at least 8 straight answers? Not chutzpah. Very good. 3 of you. Next, 4 of you. Okay. I'm going to raise the what do you call, the bar. Who of you do you think have got 10 right? Oh my God, 3 of you. 4. You think you got 10 right? You think you got 10 right. Okay. Let me ask you the ultimate question. Which of you think has got all 12 questions right? 11 right. Okay. Huh? Also the 2 of you. Both of you, please come here. What's my bag? Okay, first of all, what's your name? Yes, Kodak, and yours? Ashit. Okay. For daring to come here and having hopefully 11 rights. Good job. Alright, now, here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is alternate questions. So you read the first question and then give the answer. And the rest of you, please check your answers with answers that are given here. Okay. Come stand here. Okay. Read the first one. Come here. You can read. It's all enough already. Stand here. Right, good. Read the question and then give the answer. And then you, sir, you will be reading this next question and then you will answer. First question. Okay.
How many zeros after 1 million? 6.
6. Anybody objects to that? That is correct.
How many zeros after 1 in a row? 7.
7. Everybody got that right. That was easy. Okay.
How many after 1 in a billion? 9.
9. Okay. Those who have right, just keep checking your answers. Good.
What does the GDP stand for? Gross Development Product.
Oh. Gross domestic product. Okay, good. Well, no. But if you've got gross domestic product, check mark.
Approximately how many rupees in a dollar currently?
62. If you've got 62 right, then you just check it. Okay. Next one.
What is India's GDP? Approximately 600 billion.
1.8 billion. Correct. Okay. Next.
What is approximately world's GDP? 70 billion.
Now that was a giveaway. Come on, everybody should have got it right. That was a handicap. Okay, that's good. Next one. Huh? approximately 70s. And it's certainly not 50, certainly not 100.
What is India's biggest import?
If our currency devalues, does it help our export or import?
Export. Okay, that's good. Maybe you can.
What is the biggest reason for currency devaluation? Trade deficit?
Trade deficit is pretty much, but if you have got inflation, that is also correct. So you can check mark, yes, recession is not the right one. But if you got either, it was a trick question actually. But both deficit and inflation can cause your currency to go, right? And if they're both there, God's helping. Right now we have a problem in India. That's why the rupee went from about 52 last year to 62. That's a big depreciation. Devaluation.
Which country has been accused for currency manipulation?
China. And what they did, so they pegged their yuan to dollar. And even though they were getting a lot of exports, so when you have a lot of exports, your currency should appreciate, right? You got a lot of dollars, a lot of euros, a lot of rupees. So your currency should appreciate. But what they did is they just said officially it's 8 yuan, no matter what happens out in the marketplace. So when you keep your yuan cheap, then you can compete with other countries, and they destroyed world's manufacturing by doing that. That's how Chinese played the game. Of course, they produce cheap products, but a lot of other countries did too. Next. Who's done?
This country has been accused
That's
what are the 5 countries what is known as BRICS?
okay.
The Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Good. Okay. All right. Well done. Have a seat there. Okay. Those of you who got at least 3 rights, please stand up. At least 3 rights. Bravo, everybody, huh? Okay. So those of you who had 5 rights, keep standing. The rest sit down. Those who got 5 rights, keep standing. The rest sit down. Oh, good. 5 rights. Those who had 7 rights, keep standing. The rest sit down. Oh, those who had 9 rights, keep standing. The rest sit down. Pretty good. Those who had 10 rights, please keep standing, and the rest sit down. Those who had 11 rights, please keep standing, the rest sit down. Fantastic. Who are those who had all 12 rights? Keep standing, the rest sit down. Wow! Please come back. You're my star of the day. You also got 12 rights. Oh, you started. I'm sorry. You know, these are all very relevant issues when it comes to export. How do you manage the currency? What is the impact of the trade on your GDP? And here's where I want to talk a few things. Let me show you a slide. So this is the slide which shows, and I've taken only BRICS nation. And why did I take only BRICS nation? Anybody? Similar, the 5 countries are known to be the new tigers. They are emerging markets, they are growing rapidly, they have a huge potential, and they are big countries. They are not tiny little country like Singapore. Okay? So these are big countries, growing well, and they are a special class in itself. So I wanted to compare India with its peers of BRIC countries. So here's a slide which shows in blue trade per person. You don't worry about the numbers, okay? Just visually think of the height of each of the columns. So the blue represents. Can anybody see at the back the names of the countries? Yeah? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. You know, when you say this, I'm thinking yes. I'm thinking no, because in some countries, this means no. This means yes. So when you did this, that's why I questioned. But I understand, I'm from here, so I understand what you said. So you can see, there are some countries that have huge trade per capita, per person, the blue lines. The takeaway here is, in the BRICS country, which have the emergence of new economy, we are way down, one of the lowest trade per person. And therefore, I look at it as an opportunity to grow. You know why? Because if you're getting 30% marks in your class, and you have to go 10%, all you have to do is add 3 more, right? But if you're at 60% and you have to grow 10%, you have to add 6 points. So we are at a point where we can easily grow because we are at the very base of trade per person. So here is the relationship between trade and GDP. So everybody knows GDP is the gross domestic product. So gross domestic product also includes services. Like if you go to your doctor or dentist and you pay the bill, that's part of gross domestic product, even though it's not product. So product includes service, okay? If you export something, is it part of your gross? Is it part of your GDP? If you export something, yes or no? Raise hand who's saying if you make something and export, is it part? Should it be counted as part of the GDP or not? Those who say yes, please raise your hands. Excellent, because it is. Because the products were made in your country. What about the product that you import and consume? Is that part of the GDP? Raise your hand who thinks it's yes. Nobody. Excellent. That's not part of the GDP. So, when you look at trade and GDP, GDP is the orange line. I think it's orange. And the blue line is trade in billions of dollars. You can clearly see the relationship between when there is a blue line higher, the orange line is also higher. So, now let's talk about slide. Let's go back one slide. One back. So, back. Yeah. So, trade per person, we realize India is very, very low compared to the rest of it. Suppose we are able to grow our trade per person, not in a huge amount, not as much as Russia, not as much as South Africa, because South Africa exports a lot of gold and diamonds, so very pricey thing, so the trade per capita per person is very high. Russia exports a lot of oil and natural gas, so their trade per person is very high. But comparable countries like Brazil that does same kind of thing that we do, if we are able to raise, and we'll talk about how we can raise it, if we are able to raise our trade per person to be about half of what Brazil is, not even as much, half of what Brazil is. Let's see what it does to us. Next. So India's trade and GDP, what if trade per person reaches half of Brazil? Look what happened to the trade in millions. It just more than doubled because they have a big population. Let's go on to the next slide, and this is the most important one. So once we raise our trade per person to 50% of what Brazil is, and we're going to talk how we're going to do that. Look what happens to the jobs created, and these are numbers that I didn't make. These numbers have been made by World Trade Organization, which is a very reputable, respectable organization of which India is a member. WTO says for every $1 billion of export, you create 35,000 jobs, well-paying jobs, and you double the GDP. For every $1 billion of export, you increase your GDP by 2 times because it has a ripple effect. So look, all we did is try to reach India's trade per person to about half of Brazil, a comparable country. And we have added 35, you can see that, 35 million jobs. 35 million jobs. Do you know, anybody wants to take a guess how many cars and trucks Tata Motors make? Perfect. What do you think Tata Motors make? I mean, they make nanos, they make trucks, they make cars, Indigo, all kinds of things. Jaguar, Land Rover, right? Everybody knows Tata. That's what do you think roughly? Just take a number. What do you think the total number of cars, trucks that Tata Motors make? That's one of the largest in India. They are the largest. Take a guess. Come on. Think about it. Well, if you're not, I will have to volunteer. They make 1 million trucks, buses, cars a year. I started my first job in India with Tata Motors when they were making 25,000 units a year. 25,000 units a year. Today they make 1 million. But here's a shocker. How many people do you think they employ in producing this 1 million units? Take a guess.
50,000.
Huh?
50,000.
My God, you're on the button. 60,000 people only for producing 1 million units. Only 60,000. There's so much automation, so many robotics, so much going on that they only employ 60,000. So compared to the entire production of Tata Motors, which is one of the largest in India, producing 1 million units, they have employed 60,000. But if you can raise your GDP paid per person to half of what Brazil is, you create 35 million jobs, 12 million jobs. See the power of trade? That is the opportunity that we have to look at. And the other thing I want to say is that I want to move on to what I consider as the most critical area of where we can grow our trade. Let me go back to the old slide, number 6. This one, thank you. So, can you, ladies and gentlemen, tell me what do you think is the prominent sector under which all these firms are? IT. Except for H. Bloom that ships out flowers and gifts to corporations in New York, the rest of them are all IT, software, hardware. Today, the biggest growth sector is high-tech. So I want to talk about high-tech. There is an internet billionaire called Milner. He has defined 3 individual items that are key to technology growth. And we'll go to the slide to the 3. Yeah, this one. For the purpose of young people, I will call them the 3 killer apps. The platform, free, and e-commerce. Let's talk a little bit about platform. Next one. So what is platform? Platform is the ability of companies and individuals to be able to promote the sales and marketing of their product on some other existing platform almost free of charge. So Amazon.com, for example, has 2 million independent entrepreneurs trading their goods. The equivalent of their sales is $25 billion with 9 zeros. Remember 9 zeros after B? How many would it be in rupees and crores? Anyone? I don't want to speak to it. If you were Shakuntala Devi, well, you'll tell us in a moment, but I don't expect anybody to be Shakuntala Devi here. I want you to be a creative thinker, not just calculation machine. So, it is $25 billion, I did this in about 2 minutes, is 1.5 lakh crores rupees. That's how much business is being done by non-Amazon entrepreneurs through an Amazon platform. If these guys had little stores of their own, they will need as much space as the entire island of Manhattan. Or I checked the geography of district of Gandhinagar, if you are eventually moving there. It will use up half the district of Gandhinagar to put all the stores that are needed, which are done through the platform of Amazon. That's the power of platform. Next. So free. That's the other killer app for technology. Do you know, I'll tell you a story. A couple of years back, the Boston school bus system that takes kids to school went on strike. The drivers went on strike. And parents were in panic because both are working. How are we going to take the kids with all the traffic and everything and drop them every day? So there was a small little company called Uber. They sent out a tweet to the parents saying, we can collect your kids at half the price. That was such a powerful story that media picked it up. It was written up in Boston Globe, that's a paper, local newspaper, it was on their TV. And the brand that it created overnight, in 1 year, this company went from 12 cities to 35 cities in America, growing at 18% per month, not per annum. The power of free. Ranbir Kapoor, I don't want to go into it, but he did this Yaranam song. It's called, what's it called? Sara Zamana on YouTube with the LED lights. And this went viral. So everybody was talking about LED lights all of a sudden. It was such a simple and creative way of doing it. And of course, you know, the whole Arab Spring, it was all instant thing. And same thing with Obama's victory. It was all instant Twitter, that kind of thing. Aap party in Delhi. So let's wait. Next one. And the other thing I want to very quickly touch is what I was doing when I started my international business. You know, it used to cost me $3 a minute to call India. And from India, nobody called. In fact, even from Europe, they didn't call because it was so expensive to call. So I used to do the calling. Today, it's like 3 cents. Everybody knows Skype? Raise your hand who knows Skype. Great, terrific. And that's free. Skype to Skype. And the final killer app is what I call e-commerce. So currently, 6% of all retail sales is done online. This is expected to go 20% and reach 50% in 20 years. If you are a small group pottery producer in a village in Rajasthan, or you are a producer of maple syrup in a tiny little town in Vermont and way south, northeast of the United States, or you produce costume jewelry in a little home in Balsar, you can create a world-class shop on your web. And no one knows that you are a little man, because you have to have the products and you have to do very smart marketing. But that is a very long subject. How do you market on the internet? How do you market online? That's a very important subject, and it would be a topic for some other talk that I'd be happy to come over and do, but not this year. But that's a very, very significant topic. But believe me, people are doing it. They are building sales out of nowhere, and of course they have to have product, and they have to have good marketing, and they have to have quality assurance. The punchline is, if you are very, very smart, and you are very, very lucky, you can be very, very rich very, very quickly. Rich for yourself and a job creator. And that brings me finally to one of the most important points of my conversation today, and that is about communication. Harvard Business School students were sent a survey. Those kids, students who had been out in real life for 10 years, very successful. So 500 of them were sent a survey by the school saying, Which of the subjects that you learned for 2 years and sweated to learn them was the most useful to you in real life? Of course, Harvard is known for its marketing courses, known for its finance or business policy. But the answer surprised everybody. They said the course that came to us most handy in real life was written and oral communication. Not finance, not marketing, not business policy, but written and oral communication. Especially if you're going to connect to the world, you're going to do a lot of communication. You have to be sensitive to their culture. You have to be able to create an image of being a professional. And what is the biggest way we communicate these days? In writing. Email. Absolutely. 73% of business correspondence is done by email these days. Throughout the world. This is very important. So what I did is to illustrate what not to do when you are sending an email. And that applies to any communication, whether it's written, oral, email, non-email, brochure, website. The principle that applies to email applies to everything. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at a real email that I got from a exporter of rubies in Jaipur, very successful domestic exporter, and I want you to look at it for 2 minutes and tell me what's wrong with that. Okay, let's see the email. Thank you. Just take a look at it, and I want you to raise your hand as to what's wrong with this email. Okay, anybody, what's wrong with this email? Yes?
Spellings are wrong.
Spellings are wrong. That's the moment you see an email with wrong spelling, you say, this guy is not detail oriented. I can't trust his quality. Subject. Subject, hello. What does that mean? I mean, what's the most important part of an email? Subject. You are wasting away the prime space. It's like when you turn on 9 o'clock TV, all you see is some boring 1999 lecture by somebody. Even worse than that is saying subject hello. He could have simply said, thank you for your inquiry about rubies. Happy to. Something so that I get 100, when I'm away from my work for 7 days, I have 133 emails to look at. Which email do you think I'm going to see? Something that says hello or something more inviting. So subject is very important. Spend a little time thinking about what your subject would be. Don't leave it blank, please. I get emails with no subject. I can't sort it, I can't read it. I put it up to last. I said, I'm going to read this email later on. What else is wrong with this one? Yes? SMS language. You don't need SMS language. It doesn't cost you any more to put full language than to put SMS language. And there's another problem with SMS language. Certain short forms that are known here don't mean the same thing in other parts of the world. MSG. What's the Chinese That's what, when I hear MSG, I think of monosodium glutamate. You don't want to use, a funny story about it. In the early 90s, when HIV and AIDS were scaring the hell out of people in America, somebody from India went back to from US Union. He went to India and came to India and he wrote back saying, India has made great progress. There are PCOs and STDs spreading all over. STD in the United States is what? Sexually transmitted disease. my God, I'm not going to India anymore. So you have to be very careful what you say. What else is wrong with this one? Yes?
Construction of the sentence.
Construction sentence, I mean, it's so poor. So poor. Anything else? Punctuation mark is missing. The greeting and everything. We remain. What language is that? The British language? Nobody remains anymore. What else? Capital is missing. When you write your text messages to your friends, do what you do with your language. You can tear it apart. You can use no capital letters. You can use all the short forms you want. You can use all the language distortion you want. But when you're writing to a potential customer or a potential business associate, make sure your English, because that's the only thing he sees about you. He has never met you. So how do we make an impression of what kind of supplier you will be? Your email. That's your CV right there. That's how he's going to make a decision whether to work with you or not. Anything else? Formatting is very poor. What about the very first, second line? Now, in India, we say Mr. with the first name, and it's pretty cute, I think. It's cute. But nowhere in the world you put Mr. in front of your first name. In America, you can get into first name very quickly. But if you want to say Mr., you have to use the last name. You can't put Mr. in first name. These are cultural things that are very important. And thanks to internet, you don't need a lot of background reading. When I was doing international business, which I was doing about 15 years back, I came to realize that, and this is the last thing I'm going to say because it's already 6:10, how much cultural differences are there. Americans are some of the most straightforward people. What they say is what they mean. They have a lot of problems. They do all kinds of messing around with our, diplomatic people and others. But when it comes to individuals, Americans are the most straightforward. What they say, what they mean, and what they say, what they will do. As you go east from America, the world starts to get a little more complex. When you come to Europe, you have to know what is being said, but you can figure out. By the time you're in Japan, gosh, you can't understand ever what they're saying because they never say no. You have to figure out by what they're saying, they mean yes or no. So unless you've got an interpreter or you lived in that country for 10 years, you cannot understand. I went to buy a dog at Tokyo Pet Store because somebody had asked me to get a ninja dog. So I go to this lady and I said, can I have a ninja dog? So this is exactly what she does. Very sorry. I mean, she couldn't bring the word no. I don't have to her tongue. Just kept saying, very sorry. I felt sorry. I even asked her for the dog. 1 hour question that you asked. Okay. Very good question.
You said about how increasing our product trade per person with great jobs. How do we increase the trade per person and how does it create jobs?
Okay, so we create trade per person more by overall increase in trade. How do we increase our overall export capability? By producing products that are competitive, that have good pricing. One of my problems with a lot of Indian industries is that they have plucked the low-hanging fruits and they're not pushing the limits to make our workforce competitive, our products quality, to meet the world's best. I mean, the Y2K, you remember Y2K? The Y2K was going to be a disaster for the whole world. But fortunately, we had a lot of young engineers who knew coding. And all of a sudden, an IT industry was born in India. And that became huge, BPO. But now, where are we going with that? When are we going to have the next, Sabir Bhatia? What's the name? Sabir Bhatia? We're going to need that kind of ecosystem that allows you to think creatively, to think boldly, to be able to experiment. I don't know of many of our school systems that encourage people to be thinkers. They become storage of memory. But today, a memory stick of this size can carry 36 gigabytes. You don't need to store. You need to be thinking. You have to become thinkers. You have to be bold to experiment. And that has to come with our education, with our ecosystem. And then we make products that are innovative, that are new, that are competitive. And believe me, you can do it, because I just showed you the slide of 8 Indians who are doing it in America. 8% of the new growing industries are done by Indians, given the right ecosystem. So it's a big challenge, but it can be done. We have to start. So, one last question and then. Yes.
Now we spoke of the Indian Americans who were very successful but what do you think are the challenges facing Indian entrepreneurs? What are the biggest challenges you think? Because the government does not provide a lot of assistance, that is true. And there are certain blocks such as rules related to industry which block progress. So what do you think of the good way of going?
Well, I think we have a lot of challenges. We have very poor infrastructure. If you want to ship something out of the, our Bombay docks or wherever, the time it takes from your product, all the congested roads, it's a long process. So manufacturing has a lot of infrastructure problems, power cuts. But there are other industries where, that's why I said technology. Technology doesn't need heavy machinery, doesn't need big shipment going out from Bombay port. And you guys are very creative, capable young people. So think not of the problem, think of solutions. And there are solutions. And technology is one of the biggest growing sectors in the world. 30% of GDP growth of the world in the last 20 years came from technology firms. I mean, think of this way. ExxonMobil, which is the largest oil producing company in the whole world, for the last 100 years they have been empires of Exxon everywhere. They are not the number one capitalized company in the United States. Apple is. Apple is number one. Exxon is number two. Google is number three. So the whole growth is coming in the area where you can succeed. Manufacturing, I hope we can find, infrastructure. I think infrastructure today is better than it was 10 years back. I have to say, it's bad, but it's better than it was 10 years back, and 10 years back was better than it was 20 years back. So friends, it's a great pleasure to talk with you. If there's one thing that you can take home today, you don't have to think in terms of communication correctly for export. When you're doing your communication with your professor, with your potential client, with your potential employer, please remember this email from Mr. Mohan.
Sweet spot between non-IT sector or non-software sector and software sector. But we have been facing problems. Like we have tried to brainstorm on various things and various business types that might be possible. So how do you think we should tackle this problem?
Well, I think we have to identify two things. One is you have to look at what problem does your product solve? Is that problem widespread? I mean, for example, this whole bus thing that I said, there was a strike, and they immediately came there and helped them out and became instant hit. So we have so many problems. When you identify a problem, that's the best way of starting. Identifying a problem and producing a solution for it. Cheap, inexpensive solution that works. It's not like a theory, like, okay, this is good, but people will, just lap it up if there's a good solution.
So that's another thing. Like, should we target a problem or should we target a market, audience? Like, how?
I think it's one of the sources. I mean, if there's a problem, there is an audience. There is an audience. The other thing is, and a lot of people have done that, if there is something that you're passionate about, you know this will work, and you love the product, you love the service. That has, for example, she had a book called Everyday Entrepreneur. She talked about one young lady that she just loved to cook. She was a teacher. So
She loved ice cream. She loved ice cream, and then she started making ice cream powder in her kitchen. And today it's become very successful. Ice cream is $1,000.
Because she loved that product, she could put her heart into it. So either identify a problem that you solve, or have a product or a service that you are so good at, and then test it. And if you fail, don't worry, because it's a great learning experience. Try to experiment. I mean, so many entrepreneurs have failed so many times. But they learned. They learned about the market, they learned about the product, their capability. It's just magic bullet.
We're not coders first. We are not coding much. We realize that any service that is provided it has got to do something with the IT space. What do you think about going into a space where you don't have much skills, maybe in partnership with someone? Is that a norm in the US or India?
Well, I mean, it's always about finding a product that is not there. Public there's a market. Whether you're doing partnership or your own. Partnership has a couple of advantages and many disadvantages. Advantages that when you bring something to the table that works well with you. But managing a partnership, first rule of partnership is you have three great friends, write down on a piece of paper what will be the role of each one. If it's successful, how much will each share, how much work can you do, and what's the exit strategy. If you don't get along, there should be an exit strategy. A lot of people have done partnership, all of a sudden they find that the very best friends that they had have now become their number one enemy because there was something that was not, they thought was not fair. I was doing more than he was doing. So it's very, very, very important to write down and have a partnership. And it's like honeymoon. When you want to make a relationship with your wife, when do you want to do it? When you started fighting, or you want to do it when you're in the honeymoon stage? Honeymoon stage. So initially you are in the honeymoon stage as partners. Make sure everything gets written down. You can talk, accommodate each other, be cooperative. If the relationship falls apart, don't even think of trying to. That's the only thing that I would say about partnership. That you have to be very careful. Otherwise, there's always.
So I did
a partnership on a building. We had a 37 apartment complexes. And we wrote down a simple partnership agreement. And it was so good. When it was just an instinct, let's do it. Let's just say what happens if one of the partners decides not to do. He can hold up selling the properties, and you don't want to keep the property. What do you do then? You can sell it to him. Get the market price and sell it to him. So there were all kinds of exit strategies. So that's as important as the product.
Often in partnerships, when you just start dating and everybody's working very hard, things go well. Because when the money comes in and you're successful, that's how it's
In every partnership,
Almost
everybody. So you can learn from these people's mistakes by having some ground rules of how the partnership will progress.
And one thing, like you brought up email etiquette once. So what I think is, right now we are in the job search state and everything. So
Yeah.
is it good to have a flashy subject line? Because as someone who receives a lot of emails,
I would never. See, I want somebody who is sober and who is giving me a message that I want to read. So, for example, I do a lot of selection for advisors that I send to different countries. So, if the project says advising small businesses on how to access finance in North Africa, the key qualification that I look at, has he got experience in advising in North Africa? Once I see that, that's in my inbox. So you got to pick the most important thing up front. Don't bury it at the bottom, best thing that he wants to read. A lot of people going to, very nice to meet you, and it's this and this. And finally at the end, they say, by the way, I've also done 3 years in North Africa. I don't have time for that. They get hundreds of applications. So your CV has to be very sharp, very pointed, and don't have one CV for all the jobs. You can have a half a dozen CVs. Nobody's going to double cross check. Tailor it exactly to what the position is. They will announce the position. They'll tell you what kind of person you're looking for. If you have those qualifications, focus sharply on those. Don't send them a standard CV. Study the company's profile, their website, and see where they are trying to make headway. What is their hot buttons? Make sure that you address those in your CV. That I'm so interested in your expenditure and your expansion in Goa. Because I've worked in Goa. I'm just giving you an instrument. Making a very targeted CV is important. And then when you send an email, it should be very professional. Don't use emoticon. Later on, when you become chummy, you can wink and you can smile. But don't use too many flashy things. Just one font. Very small, succinct. The premium is in making it short, brief, and to the point. Pressy. Did you read Pressy in your school? Yeah. You did Pressy. Pressy. An elevator speech should be able to say in 27 words or less how qualified you are. Because he doesn't have, the recruiter gets straightened up. How does your application stand up? By making it so clearly focused to that particular assignment.